So welcome everyone. I'm Hannah from the Blue Hill Library, and I just wanted to say a quick hello and thanks to you all for joining us this evening. The library, along with the First Congregational Church of Blue Hill, have co-sponsored this event, and we're very excited to have Racial Equity and Justice, a Maine-based group that's been providing support for communities across the nation on issues of racial equity and justice. And they're going to share with us tonight a bit about their work. And I'm going to hand it over to David Jolly from the Congregational Church to just give a welcome from their end as well. So go ahead, David.
Thanks, Hannah. Blue Hill Congregational Church is delighted to co-sponsor tonight's presentation by staff of Racial Equity and Justice in Bangor. And tonight's program will give us the opportunity to learn about the important work that this community-based organization is doing to combat racial injustice and to create a fairer, more equitable society for everyone. David Patrick and Desiree Vargas are the co-founders of Racial Equity and Justice, and they are joined tonight by a couple of other staff of the organization. And right now, I'm going to turn the program over to David Patrick.
Hi, good evening. My name is David Patrick. I'm co-founder of Racial Equity and Justice. I'm a community social worker. That's my primary background. I work with underrepresented, marginalized, and at-risk community members to help them with substance use disorders, mental health, housing, food security, and discrimination and bias and things like that. So I will pass it over to Desiree.
Oi, usika sa cabo, diri Desiree, taka Taino Nauru. Hello everyone, my name is Desiree. I am a Taino woman. I am a co-founder of Racial Equity and Justice. I also do a lot of other mutual aid volunteer work, as well as I am a tribal councilwoman of my tribe, Iayagua, Taino people of the Caribbean. And I'm really thankful to be here. So thank you for sharing this space with us and allowing us to talk about what we do. I'll pass it on to Molly.
Oni kwamsiwin telisi Molly Obamswin dai Udanak, Rigi Udanak Naga Naranswak. My name is Molly Wamswin. I'm a citizen of the Odanak Abenaki Nation up in Quebec, First Nation, and I work with REJ now, and I also founded a nonprofit for land rematriation for Wabanaki peoples called Bombazine Land Trust. I'm also a writer and musician, activist. I'll pass it to Lakota.
Gwigwe, Deliwizi Lakota, Nujiao, Elnaba Menahan, Dolbe Wagudam. Hello, everyone. It's nice to see you all. My name is Lakota Sanborn. I'm from Indian Island. I'm from the Turtle Clan, and I am also obviously a member of REG, and I wear a few different hats. I am also a part of Bombazine Land Trust with Molly, and I work for a few different organizations in the state, mostly centered on environmental rights and advocating for different policy and stuff here in the state. So yeah, thank you. And with that, I will pass it back to Desiree, I believe.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen right now. Oops, okay, there we go. Awesome. Alrighty. So Racial Equity and Justice organization, was co-founded in Maine, but we do a lot of work throughout the state of Maine, as well as even nationally, which has been really great. Really, our mission is to create more liberation, resources, healing, and opportunities and education for Black, Brown, Indigenous people of color. But we also do a lot of other work. We do a lot of education for the greater community as well, and a lot of work, mutual aid work with a lot of allies, which has been really amazing. And we've been getting a lot of work done. So the beginning of Racial Equity and Justice, it was co-founded in 2019, but by David, Patrick, and myself. But we've actually been doing, all of us actually at Racial Equity and Justice have been doing this work for, over a decade. A lot of us were born into quote unquote activism and advocacy, but we've decided to put it under a nonprofit organization and do this work in a more organized way, as well as being able to apply for funding for that work, as well as being able to do some mutual aid work with organizations that are really like-minded as well. Our team consists of, honestly, we grew from David and I doing pretty much wearing all the hats that, is needed to run an organization, and has, the team has expanded. We have probably over 12 people right now who are doing a lot of work individually, but also for racial equity and justice. We also do a lot of, like I said, mutual aid work. So it's really amazing to be able to have organizations support us while we support organizations or coalitions or entities or individuals, to be able to redistribute resources, to people who need them. Molly?
Yeah. So racial equity and justice really is a network of activists who are doing a lot of different things. And so we all sort of come together and we show up to each other's, the fields that each other are most involved in, and we build coalition together. And we have all of these programs that we run. I just realized my headphones aren't plugged in, so I'm going to just take them off. We have all these programs that we run, and as well as a lot of community building stuff for folks involved in RHA and the communities that we come from. So we do a lot of cultural activities. One of the pictures here is we were tanning a hide as a group, which is a Wabanaki tradition in this area. At least we were following Wabanaki protocols. We also do a lot of, as Des mentioned, and as Lakota will talk about more, land access work and land back work. So that's directly reallocating lands and growing areas to BIPOC and Wabanaki people as well, building up our gardens so we can do food sovereignty and mutual aid work based around food. We have an apothecary also for the medicines that we grow and gather for community health. And we do outdoor recreation stuff, a lot of education. I think all of us in different capacities are educators, and we work with public schools and with institutions doing equity and inclusion and anti-racist trainings on a variety of issues. We also do organizing of events and actions. We do some police liaison work. We have an adoption group for support for transracial adoptees. And we also do, mutual aid. We work around Heritage Month calendars for advocating for different issues and communities. What am I forgetting? We also we work with Needlepoint Sanctuary as partners for clean needle exchanges and care for folks. And we do stuff for unhoused issues, food insecurity. It's really like a lot of different programs, all based around harm reduction, advocacy, and activism. And
Molly,
yeah.
could you talk a little bit about maybe what mutual aid looks like just across the state of Maine, and things like that?
Yeah, for sure. So basically we I mean, a good example is with planting and food sovereignty work, right? Like working to grow food that we can bring to communities that have food insecurity. So that kind of work, and again with Needlepoint Sanctuary, right? Like making sure people have their needs met in terms of um, hygienic needle exchanges and everything. What am I? Do you
No,
have
I think you covered it. You said our harm reduction with Needlepoint Sanctuary, food security with P&J, Peace and Justice Center, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard about. The Greater Bangor Housing Coalition is fairly new. So if you haven't heard about it, it's because it's new, but it's a coalition of multiple organizations. And so we've been working a lot on a lot of policy and resources and all that good stuff to address the crisis of unhoused folks. And like Molly said, we definitely do a lot of mutual aid work for the land access initiatives.
Go ahead, Lakota.
Molly, do you want to talk a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure, yeah. So like I said, I work with the Bombazine Land Trust for trying to get it's called land rematriation. There's something, if you're not familiar with it, called the land back movement, which is a lot of people are sort of taking part in this based on a lot of scientific studies, as well as just sort of the moral tides of our society changing. And basically it's a decolonization effort to get land back to the original inhabitants as a means for restorative justice as well as environmental justice, because Native people, we are 5% of the global population, but we protect and defend 80% of the world's biodiversity. And a lot of recent studies show that the best way to fight climate change is actually for indigenous leadership and indigenous land stewardship and sovereignty over the lands that we come from. So Bombazine Land Trust was founded in sort of that understanding in Western Maine. And we're working there to also do food sovereignty work as well, and mutual aid work, and sort of uplift tribal sovereignty and issues in Maine. Most of what I do as an activist is centered around earth justice and advocating against environmental racism. I also do a lot of indigenous education, and I work with Sunlight Media Collective, which is a team of media makers, basically indigenous and non-indigenous, doing advocacy around the intersections of environmental injustice and tribal sovereignty. Go ahead, Lakota.
Hi. Yeah, so when we're talking about racial equity, one of the biggest inequities in the United States happens to be land access and land ownership. 97% of rural land in this country is owned by folks who are white. So there is this massive inequity when we're talking about the ability to, like Molly was saying, to grow our own foods, to be able to have food sovereignty or food independence. So this project is really a way for us to be able to be in relation with the land. This initiative supports our gardening, our food security, food sovereignty, like I said, cultural activities. So we're able to actually go to spaces and pick medicines or be able to teach people about the land. We do outdoor recreations like archery, or like Molly said again with the hide tanning. And this helps to foster our apothecary project as well. And it's a great way for us to be in communication with the land and our non-human relatives in a way that reflects traditional Wabanaki values and understandings of the cohabitable space that we occupy. So yeah, it's really important that we're doing this land work because it is, in a sense, the basis for a lot of the other things that we're able to do. We have a responsibility to care for the earth, and this project creates room for us to do that. Many people of color, Black Indigenous people of color, have been displaced or dispossessed from land. A lot of the times we have been exploited or attacked, or separated from, the ability to just go into a space and to sit with the land and the water, which is very healing, in a lot of different ways. And so this is just a very, very important initiative that we are working on. We currently have a few people who are Wabanaki, myself, Molly, and a couple of others included, who are part of this project. And in the future, we're looking to expand this to some of the other Wabanaki folks who are doing a lot of land back or land access initiative work. There's several different nonprofits in the state, and individuals and groups, obviously the tribes themselves, who are doing a lot of this kind of work. And so we're looking to expand and to really be able to work with all the communities here to build a safe and inclusive space for Wabanaki and other people of color and allies. Yeah, so the work that I do individually, to give like a little bit more of a rundown, I also, I'm a board member for Bombazine Land Trust. Yeah, that's something that is fairly recent. It's a newer nonprofit organization, but like Molly was saying, it's based on our ability to really embody the work of this land back and land access within Western Maine, and to be able to be in right relations with the earth there, and to heal a lot of the traumas that have been perpetuated through things like massacres or things like the displacement of our ancestors that happened there historically. I also work for Sunlight Media Collective, and I don't want to use all of Molly's little things that, we work on a lot of the same projects. We're it's kind of like Venn diagram of involvement within our organizations. I'm also the social media coordinator for Nibizun, which is an Indigenous-led nonprofit that's based out of Pasadumkeag, and its main tenets are basically using culture as a form of medicine to heal intergenerational traumas and to bring connectivity back to the land, with Wabanaki and non-Indigenous peoples alike, just all peoples in general. So yeah, with that, I will now pass it over to David, I believe.
So for some reason, it looks like David got kicked out because I can't find David.
Yeah, I think he just dropped off the call.
Okay.
I'll let him in if he rejoins.
Okay. I'll pick up where he maybe. Anyways, that happens. Okay. So actually a lot of people I would say that a lot of people know racial equity and justice from this giant rally and protest and demand of the city after George Floyd was murdered. That happened last summer, that large protest. But since then, a lot of people have known us for some of the work that we do education wise. So we've been doing a lot of racial justice and diversity, equity, inclusion trainings and consultations, and working in schools or with in government spaces, institutions, businesses, wherever really people need the support of diversity, equity, inclusion, and racial justice education in order, to have a more inclusive space, or maybe they're serving the community. So we do a lot of work to support or to reform or to completely change around policies and actions and initiatives. So then it creates a place where everyone can exist with more equity and justice, really. So we actually just recently, like I would say like a few weeks ago, we officially just David and I created a business to put that education under. And we we'll still have consultants from racial equity and justice organization do consultation for racial equity and justice business, but now they're two entities that kind of do sister work together. And we did this for a few reasons. Oh, David, you're back.
Yeah, I'm sorry, my computer just shut off out of nowhere. So yes, you already did the previous slide.
Yeah, if you want to talk about the services and then include this social maybe our vision too of what the business will look like in terms of expanding to.
Yeah, so right, people hear business and I think right, that's the only definition we have, but I think really we have more of a collective firm of experts and advocates and those with expertise. Community members of color have a lot of professional skill sets that don't always get to be showcased, and so our vision was to provide a space for that and to support community members and educate others as well. And so some of our primary things that we do is trainings, workshops. We support a variety of different organizations and institutions. We work with schools, we work with towns, we work with businesses in the public and private sector. We do work with local law enforcement, whether that's advocacy for individuals who have had certain instances where law enforcement is maybe those tensions are high, maybe they feel that their rights have been violated, or oftentimes we'll do collaborative projects with law enforcement trying to create safer spaces for community members of color. And this involves policy and outreach and community development. So we have a multitude of kind of services that we provide. That includes a lot of our academic supports. I think that's probably my favorite work, is working with students, K through 12. I think I say this in just about every public forum. There's people in first grade, second grade that have a better grasp on accepting people's identities, accepting people, and celebrating people and valuing individuals, more than those of us, myself. I would use myself as a primary example. So I really enjoy working with younger people, and I feel like the influence that they have on the world around them is really significant, especially if we start working with them at an early age. But a lot of the work we do in the school system would be maybe going in and doing presentations, working with kind of the overall environment of the school in general. Like, right, if you walk into the building, is there any acknowledgement of Hispanic Heritage Month? Is there any acknowledgement of Native American Heritage and Alaskan Native Month? Is there any acknowledgement of Black History Month, Islamic awareness? Like, what visual cues would you get that diverse identities and cultures are being celebrated? And so we work with schools on like a very basic level, just to create an environment that's safe, that's welcoming, and then obviously that celebrates, doesn't erase, doesn't erase identities. So and then a lot of that work happens with administrators, teachers, staff as well. I think one of the really important components of our organization is that we have kind of a dualistic approach. So we work on policies and actions and the creation of safe space in spaces that community members of color occupy, but then we also work to establish healing spaces for our community members. So with this dualistic approach, we do a lot of the policy work and kind of the more technical work that I think we're well known for. But on the other side of that, as Lakota and Molly and Desiree mentioned, we garden, we do archery, we work with medicines, we do community events, we provide space for people to heal after very public kind of incidents and things like that that make national headlines, but then also like really private and intimate moments that people have in their personal lives with their families and things like that. And just having a space and a resource that community members can come to and just be authentic and not worry, I guess. And I guess that's the best way of putting that. That's our overview. I know, right, it's a balancing act between just kind of going on and on. Like we could do, a full kind of presentation just on a few components of our organization, but we wanted to really provide an overview of what we do, kind of how we got started, and the direction of our organization.
Yeah, I would add that building onto the business aspect. So some people may ask, the difference between the business and the organization. Essentially, our organization offers free services versus the business does have a lot of services that it's more contract work. But essentially, we want to expand the business. So then David does social work and hoping to do some clinical social work and have that under the business. And I'm hoping to add some holistic healing modalities under that as well. And so as we continue to grow and add various folks, to both sides, we're going to be able to pretty much touch on a very holistic realm that impacts individuals and communities in a way that is impactful for all around holistically for their lives. So yeah, we did want to leave time for questions. If people have them, feel free to leave them in the chat, or feel free to just unmute yourself and ask them now as well.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Anne, I see you've got your virtual hand up. Why don't you go ahead and ask your question?
Thank you. Hi, Hannah.
Hey.
Can you talk a little bit more about the work you've done in schools with kids like K-8? I'm interested in, David, what you were talking about, going into schools and not just working. Did you mostly meet with the staff and faculty, or do you also work with students?
Yeah, so I'll answer the first part and then pass it to Desiree. So we actually do. I think in my binder right now, I have a really nice drawing that a student gave me, and so we do a lot of hands-on stuff. We'll do, learning exercises with students. We'll do hands-on arts and crafts projects. Molly has presented to art classes. Presented to history classes. We've done a variety of different school kind of settings. We've worked in private school settings in the area. We've worked in large kind of large schools, and then worked with smaller student organizations kind of outside that academic setting. But as far as work that we do, a typical day of us going into a school system would be, we would be given a schedule of, maybe a first grade class, a high school class, and like you said, an 8th grade class. And we would develop materials and subject matter that was appropriate for the age group, whether that was going over a video, whether that was us presenting slides around, holidays, or education and things like that maybe isn't taught a lot in schools, and a lot of stuff like that. So I guess, for example, Black History Month, instead of going to Black History Month and approaching that from kind of a history of oppression, we approached Black History Month as a celebration. We went in there and highlighted the contributions of Black and African people to society through inventions, through art, through music, through dance, and things like that. Instead of it being kind of a history of slavery and civil rights and things like that, because that's not really representative of how our communities view those months.
Thank you so much. That's great.
Could I just say something?
Jay,
real
did you
quick?
want to? Oh, did you want to add, Molly?
Yeah, just that we also so another member of REJ and I recently did work with an elementary school in New Hampshire, so still in Wabanaki territory, but reaching outside of Maine. And Nolan, one of our members, specifically works with like the policy implementation of I'm gonna forget what law it is, LD 95 maybe, but it's
I think it's 291.
291, thanks, not 95. Which requires people to teach about Wabanaki history, right? All Maine public schools are required to do that. So we were in New Hampshire, and Nolan was able to use his expertise with that, and we worked directly with the teachers for curriculum development. That's just another way we work with schools, especially a younger age.
Thank you.
I believe Nolan tutors too, which is really amazing at the University of Maine.
Great. David Jolly, I think you had your hand raised first. Go ahead.
Thanks, Hannah. So probably many of us read in the newspaper about the racial problems in the Bangor school system last year. And I know that racial equity and justice was involved in the response to those problems. And I was wondering if some of you could talk a little bit about the work that you did there.
Yeah, essentially what David talked about in the presentation of how we go into academic spaces and support folks that's pretty much what we did. We collaborated with diversity, equity, inclusion workshop and training with staff and faculty, all staff and faculty, and was able to support them that way. And usually, you know, we try not to chase down people because we can't force to be advocates for folks, but definitely, you know, we let it be known that if students or staff or anything needs support afterwards, reaching out to us, that we're always here to support people for sure. So that's really how we collaborated. And so yeah, all their staff and faculty we were able to collaborate and partner with the training.
Were you able to provide support to individual students who came forward with stories of racial prejudice and discrimination?
So we have in some specific schools, but particularly with Bangor, usually students or parents come to us instead of the other way around, so then it doesn't create any uncomfortability or awkwardness or forcing people to feel like you need our advocacy or something. It's really we've also helped you know, in our training, establishing like, hey, Bangor, create a system of being able to have like anonymous tips, or not anonymous tips, but anonymous reports of discrimination. And so a lot of our training supports folks to be able to go through a process to be able to get that support and identify collaborative partners to support. So we're always here when families reach out to us, if parents reach out to us with confidentiality and say, hey, my students in this school, we need this support or whatever. But usually it's not necessarily the other way around unless someone has said, oh, I have a family friend who their child really needs support. Could you reach out, type of a thing.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Ruth, I see you have your virtual hand up, and then Kip, you can go after.
Two questions. I think you've sort of answered one of them, but it sounds as though your services come into play when you are asked to come to the school for whatever reason. So you're approached by the school system to come in?
Desiree, do you want to take this question?
Oh, yes. I was going to say, whether it's an academic space, a government space, an organization space, a business space, corporation, no matter what it is, usually we're reached out to.
Okay.
Yeah, if there is, a exponential problem, we do reach out, but essentially we want folks to we want to be able to meet halfway. And if we're being honest, a lot of the times, a lot of entities in this community, this is their first time taking step forward. So it's really helpful to have people step forward rather than we step to folks and then they feel like they're kitty cornered or something, into feeling like they need to do something that maybe they're, which of course we essentially do feel like everybody needs this work done. So if we want to create relationships of trust and authenticity, and for real work to get done, we can put pressure on folks, but being forceful and pointing the finger and stuff rarely has good impact. That usually creates defensiveness. So it's usually people coming to us who are ready to do the work. And we have, folks come to us feeling like they're ready to do the work. And then we say, yep, this is the work that needs to be done. And they may be like, oh, we're not ready, which is, to be honest, it does get frustrating because it feels like very basic stuff. But essentially we have people come to us.
Okay. So the other question I had was, we're a big state. How many schools can you guys reach with all of this? I mean, I'm thinking, the concentration is in District 1. We're up here in District 2, and you go all the way up the coast. That's a lot of people to reach. And it's just the 2 or 4 of you, or? Okay, that's where.
Yeah, so there's a lot of us at Racial Equity and Justice who do this education work through a variety of forms, but also we do partnering as well with different individuals and organizations to get that education throughout the state of Maine. But yeah, essentially it is a lot of work, but we aren't necessarily the only ones doing this work.
David?
Sometimes it does feel as though that's the case, but there's definitely a whole bunch of other folks, individuals doing this work. I'm not sure how many other organizations are doing it as a collective group, but there's definitely a lot of individuals, especially from the Wabanaki community, going in and just completely changing stuff in the academic space, for sure.
I'll add too that we have a lot of people working within RHA, and a lot of us are from different places around the state. So with that combined with Zoom education and everything that everyone's in right now, we actually do cover a lot of ground. And like I said earlier too, we're working outside of Maine, even beyond Maine. So
yeah,
it's easier than you think.
Okay.
Kip, did you have a question you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I mean, I know you started to talk, David did a little bit about how to make spaces immediately visibly welcoming in schools, for instance. But for those of us who belong to, say libraries or churches, these spaces in our, predominantly white communities, often built by and for other white folks, do you have resources or initial suggestions for how to start to think about making spaces as well as programming welcoming?
Yeah, I think one of the primary things is that the most communities have cultural heritage celebrations throughout the year, and so I think acknowledging those, having materials, whether that's things on bulletin boards, especially in a library, featuring authors from those communities through trusted work, right? There's a lot of harmful literature and things like that about communities that's really shouldn't be presented to the public as educational materials. But I think just doing a lot of research on what trusted sources are from community members of color and sharing those materials. I think that's the biggest indication for me when I go into a space is, do I see pictures of people who look like me? Do I see things that represent a diverse perspective and a diverse set of community members, or do I see kind of this monolithic kind of look of representation throughout materials and not a lot of things being very homogenous. So I think as long as you're making an attempt for diversity and sharing things like that visibly, that's always a good start. If you're not comfortable or you have questions about things, I would stop, right? That's what I'd say is the biggest thing is, if something you're unsure of, I wouldn't share it, and do the work to get the education to see if something is appropriate or not, whether that's using online resources that are trusted, or when you have community members of color that are willing to help, right? Not expecting them to help or expecting them to use their free time to educate others or to fill in the blanks. But I think a good mix of that for really any space.
Yeah, I would add that it's definitely a mix of representation and also investment. So just having the representation does, if it doesn't have the investment with it, it's just an aesthetic, versus if you have the representation, but then you're also investing time and support and energy and care and healing and all that stuff, then it becomes a more holistic, welcoming and inclusive space that's centered on celebration and of everyone. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add to that.
And Lisa, it looked like you might have wanted to
Yeah, I was going to call on Lisa next.
push my question a little further.
Yeah, exactly that. And by the way, hey, Molly, really good to see you. Yeah, I'm pastor of the Congregational Church, and I know that it's interesting that we've just taken lots of posters and pictures off of the walls, and in doing so recognized how completely white our congregation has been, and in our desire to be more welcoming, one of the things that we'd like to do is just that. But I really appreciate your last comment saying that that to simply have images is simply an aesthetic shift. And I wonder, and I'm grateful for this partnership, and I'm sorry I couldn't be here until late, this late, but I wonder how much REJ can work potentially with us. I'd love to do programming in the church as well, whether it's cultural programming, music is always my go-to, but also what kind of events might foster that, so that it's not simply a visual representation of what we wish what we wish we were. Sorry. So the short question is, I'm grateful for your being here now. Are there ways in which we might continue to partner with the organization to do more in our little community?
Yeah, so I'm going to screen share. Where did it go? Trying to find the presentation here. Hold on a second. There we go. This might help. So this is just our information, contact information. If you are interested in more of our work or collaboration or partnership or support, there's our number. our website, our email. We definitely encourage people to please, I'll even show folks. If people could go to our firm and click contact, and book a discovery call. That's the best way we encourage people to talk to us, because we do have a schedule that's very booked up. So clicking a discovery call gives folks a chance for us to get to know one another and what your needs are. That's really the best way that we encourage people to get in touch with us, for sure.
Can I just add real quick, Des? I feel like it's important too, and sort of doesn't necessarily show up on everyone's radar, but for different groups you might want to be reaching out to, it's important to have the sensitivity or awareness that like there are certain spaces that just aren't necessarily welcoming spaces for some communities. And I'll speak from my own experience as a Native person, and even as a musician, right, when we were touring a lot, like it got to a point where it was really hard for me to be in churches sort of no matter what sect, because of all the damage that the church has done to Native people across the world. And so I think that's just an important awareness to have of like, yeah, what are the limitations of the space that I'm trying to make more welcoming?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
For sure. Does anyone else have anything to add to that question before anyone else asks questions?
I would just add, right, doubling back down on the investment, right? That's why it's really important to make sure that investing in communities doing restorative justice and things like that where appropriate, and having relationships before moving forward.
Where is your church located again?
In Blue Hill,
Okay.
around the corner from the library.
I see.
Yeah. And one of the reasons for my question was I had in a former position in another church there was a celebration of the 350th anniversary of the town. And one of the events was to have a meeting in the middle of the road with the local Nipmuc members who were descended from folks, and then original families, as they called them, the original families of the town who were not original, but that they actually met for conversation. So when you spoke of the restorative piece, I'm new to the area, and so I'm looking widely for ways to connect and for us to do that restorative work. And I'm grateful for David's presence in the congregation and for the work he does. But that's the kind of thing that I'd love to have more guidance of. So I look forward to reaching out to your discussion or conversation.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything they want to ask before our time is up?
Is there another question in the Jolly household?
I know, right? I saw that too. I saw the body language.
Yeah, I'm Royce Harden. I'm David's husband, and I am intrigued by your business side. I think I applaud you for pursuing this. The availability of native healing products to everyone, is I think you can be the next Burt's Bees here in Maine. So, and I hope that comes to fruition. And I just wanted to ask, I assume all that, whatever comes back from that will go towards, maybe not all of it, but go back towards expanding your programs and your reach across, not just, where you're a Bangor organization and people think of you that way, but come to you from Boston, from, Worcester, from wherever that in New England. And I think that, that's why I'm so excited about the business side. I can see how it will provide you the capabilities to expand your reach. So great.
Yeah, are you from Massachusetts? Because I never hear anyone say Worcester right. I'm from Massachusetts, so I'm like, maybe I'm from
No,
Massachusetts.
I grew up in Florida. So.
Okay, wow. I applaud you.
I'm from Florida. What part? Tampa Bay, St. Pete?
No, north of Orlando, about 45 miles, a tiny little town named Yalaha,
Oh wow.
which is native.
Business side, we actually do. We've worked with people from Colorado to Washington state, so we've been expanding a lot. But yeah, definitely the business side is interesting. We've just been doing it under the org, so we just expanded out to the business. So it should be fun. It should be interesting. But yeah, essentially we have a lot of goals, and definitely our organization is all supported by community donations and community local grants, and so that's really important to get the resources and the programs out for communities of color, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's really important distinction. And so during COVID, we were able to provide care packages for people, that might have financial insecurities and things like that. And so our organization and business, like there is some overlap, but certainly grants, donations, things like that all stays with the organization and is used to expand those projects. Even today, we're out gardening and farming, planting stuff in our apothecary, working the soil. Even after that, we came back to town, got more seeds, tried to go to the cooperative extension and things like that. And so we're constantly trying to incorporate, right, the healing component, maybe our organization, the work we do to be outside and have traditional and native agricultural methods implemented, but then also, provide care for our community members all in one. So it's all kind of this full circle approach where you see each component of our organization represented in various different ways. Like even in this space today, we've talked on a vast amount of aspects of our organization.
Yeah, I see a question in the chat. So I'm not, for people who maybe who just came in, and for people who have been here. So definitely there's a difference between the two. So we are a nonprofit organization that's started. So on this contact, we have our organization website and also our business website. So there's two entities that work together. The Racial Equity and Justice Organization was co-founded in 2019. And then we just co-founded this business literally like a few weeks ago. So there's two different entities. We're pretty much trying to get this work done with as many tools that we can get. So there's not a lot of Black, Brown, Indigenous business. So we're like, that's really important. We'll do that. And some of the services that we essentially want to offer can't go under a nonprofit. So for example, when I become a licensed massage therapist or do acupuncture, I can't do that under a nonprofit. So it's really important to be able to have all our skill sets be met so we can keep expanding our team and people can go under which way they want, for sure. I think we have another question in the chat. Oh, thanks for clarifying. Yep, you're welcome. Does anyone else have anything to add? I think we have 3 more minutes.
David Jolly does.
David Jolly, did you want to? Yeah.
I wanted to make a comment. Oh, no. I want to make a comment and then ask a question. And I just wanted to say that before moving to Maine, I was on the board of a nonprofit in North Carolina that focused on empowering youth to do policy work. And our organization was very successful in a lot of ways, but we were having a very difficult time raising the money we needed beyond the grants that we were able to get to do work outside of the very specific tasks that we were expected to do as part of the grant. Until we connected with the business school at UNC Chapel Hill, and they took our organization on as a project for business school students to come up with a business model that would sustain the organization over the long term. It was amazingly successful. And I don't know whether the University of Maine have a business school. You might.
Yeah, I graduated from there. We did a project with Ottawa.
So maybe you're
the bars and the drinks. We did something similar with them.
Okay, great. Okay, so you know about that approach. All right. My question is, I'm really intrigued by what you do to increase land access and how you are supporting efforts to acquire land for the Land Back project.
Awesome. Yeah. So honestly, it's been in the works for like a year. Essentially, this has always been a dream or vision for that don't have a lot of land access or has been separated from ancestral homelands or is still fighting for rights for ancestral homelands. It's always been something on our mind. So we've just been putting the call out, having a lot of conversations, getting a lot of input from Wabanaki folks. And we've done some work. So some work with the University of Maine, creating a space for Indigenous students to access, to do cultural activities. And that's been really successful and really amazing. That's actually where we were able to access for deer hide tanning. And of course, we've had not a lot of people, jumping on like, hey, I'm a farmer, here's a space you can access, or hey, I'm a person who has 200 acres, here's 3 acres or even 0.5 acres. We actually haven't had a lot of that until recently. We had some folks out the Ellsworth Way offer some land access. So being able to share a little spot on their farm for us to be able to start some gardening, as well as offering, they have horses. So they're like, if you want to do horseback riding, we also have a pond with a canoe. You can come canoe and all that stuff. And you can tent here and stay in our tiny house or whatever. So that's been really amazing. And we're so thankful for that. And we just hope to have more of that, because there's a lot of marginalized and exploited and underrepresented and people of color across Maine who just don't have land access. And there's so many people who want land access, and they're especially like, when George Floyd was murdered and just all these other cases of injustice, the Penobscot River being poisoned, from more shootings to just whatever. Our communities want to come together and heal together. We want to do cultural activities together, whether it's a social distance way or in a way that when we can gather together, we can garden or sit or have ceremony or whatever it is. And not having a space to do that gets really frustrating for sure. So it's been really amazing to have some allies offer some space, as well as we have some Black, Brown, Indigenous people of color who may not be from Reg offering their, hey, you can come to this space that I know of for a retreat, or if you need something, or some people in Reg who have access to a little space, we do what we can with that too. So that's really what we have right now. We have that one space at that farm. So definitely always looking for support in that area as well.
Thank you, Desiree. And yeah, thanks to everyone. I think it's probably about time for us to wrap up, and I want to make sure I'm respecting everyone's time. But yeah, thank you again to all our presenters for being here tonight. For folks in the community, oh, David, yeah.
I just want to take 1 minute, less than 1 minute, to say that I am sure that if you go to the Racial Equity and Justice website, there is a button that you can push to make a donation to help continue this important work. So,
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, David, I know we started this conversation last June. And I think this is a prime example of doing the investment, having that commitment to continuing this work, because it would have been really easy for us to talk once and forget about it. And so I genuinely appreciate you continuing this work almost a year later, and kind of walking the walk instead of just talking the talk. So thank you, and thank you to everyone who participated, and thank you for having us. We really enjoy this. A lot of the work we do isn't as, I don't want to say relaxed, but it's work, and this is a nice change of pace.
Well, we so appreciate you being here, and I know the church is going to continue doing programming along these lines, and certainly the library will too. It's not on our calendar yet, but we have a program in the works for folks who are interested. I think it's going to be June 5th with Maine Wabanaki Reach to do an online workshop with them called Healing Begins with Truth, sort of more education around colonization. We've done some great programs with them in the past, so stay tuned to the library's calendar for that, and our regular Readings on Race book group and other events on this theme. And yeah, thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, I invite everyone to unmute yourselves as you sign off and shout out your thanks to our great presenters.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you very